everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different, and that is because it's going to be a book review. And the book that I am going to be telling you guys about is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. The Artist's Way. It is a book. I've been wanting to do a video about this book for a while, like a really long time. I've just finished the book a couple of weeks ago for the second time. Now I have redone it. I think it is time for me to talk about this book from the perspective of someone who is a working artist, a working creative, specifically in theatre and performance. As someone who acts, sings, writes, plays music / is musical, and from the perspective of someone who's both trying to improve and enhance their career in these creative fields, but also looking to live a generally more creative life. So this video is going to be me talking to you guys about my experience having worked through this book, having had, especially the first time I did it, a mixed experience, if I found it helpful and how I found it helpful. I'm not going to tell you straight away because then you'll just click off. So if you are thinking about buying this book and doing this book, you have me as a source to be like, what was it like? So yeah, that's what this video is. I'm going to try not to waffle. Let's get into the video. Firstly, what is The Artist's Way? So The Artist's Way, as I said in the intro, if it made it in, is a book by Julia Cameron. Julia Cameron is a writer, a journalist, a screenwriter, a poet, a playwright. She writes all of the things. And The Artist's Way is basically one of the results of her working through her own creative blocks. She was a struggling writer, screenwriter, and she had to like unblock herself, and she was able to. And then she started giving her other artist friends who were blocked advice on how she worked through her own things, to the point where some of those friends were like, you should do a course. So then she made this course called The Artist's Way. And then that course was so successful, people were like, you should put it in a book. So she put it in a book. So this book was recommended to me when I was on a job. The wardrobe mistress on that job, one night after the show, we got chatting and she was saying she was doing this book called The Artist's Way. And she was like, it's really great if you're like feeling creatively blocked or anything like that, is basically this course. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. As a precursor to the review proper, I did find some things very helpful with it, but there were things about it where I was like, This year, I found myself feeling like, I think I need to do the course again. I need to read the book again. So I did, despite the reservations I had after the first time doing it. Again, we'll get into it in the review proper. It was in many ways the same, but in many positive ways also different. So just to give you a bit of an outline of the course, like I said, it's a 12-week course. Each week is based on a different aspect of creative recovery, and it kind of goes chronologically. And then at the end of each week's chapter, there are 10 tasks. You're meant to choose 5 tasks to do. And then there are 2 other tasks, which again, we'll get into in more details, called morning pages and artist dates, which you do every day / every week. It's written in a way that you're meant to start at the beginning and then go through to the end. I'm pretty sure there are people who dip in and out, especially once they've gone through it once. And that's something that I think I'm definitely going to do, is try and revisit some of the chapters and other aspects of the book now that I've recently gone through it all again. Also, I'll double check with Josh if he's all right with me saying this, but Josh has started reading this book now. So I was also planning to go back through the book with him, not as in literally like reading it with him, but like as he's going through, look back at those week's tasks and be like, okay, so what are ones that I hadn't done or didn't have time to do? So that's an outline of the book and how it's structured. Hopefully that was clear. So I want to start with my first impressions of the book from what I remember from when I first did the course. My first impression of the course is that, to me, it felt very CBT-esque. If you don't know what CBT is, it stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, and it is a method of therapy I guess it is kind of like a talking therapy, but it's more based on like how your thoughts and your behaviors reinforce one another. So if you have certain beliefs or certain thoughts, you will reinforce them with your behaviors, and by changing your behaviors you can change your thoughts, and vice versa. It's going to be easier because I've got the book if I find an example. So let's find an example. Okay, so this is, I've just opened this randomly up at week 3, which is a recovering a sense of power. And so task number 6 is call a friend who treats you like you are a really good and bright person who can accomplish things. Part of your recovery is reaching out for support. This support will be critical as you undertake new risks. Calling a friend who is supportive is that change of behavior of being like, well, I can ask for help or I can ask for support. And then that can change your thinking to be like, oh no, I am actually good at stuff. And it's okay to have friends say, yeah, you're good at stuff, go do the thing, dude. Exercises like that felt really CBT-esque to me. There are other more reflective tasks. Let's see if there's one in this week that I've just opened. Task number 8 for the same week is list 5 people you admire. Now list 5 people you secretly admire. What traits do these people have that you can cultivate further in yourself? I guess that would be more in the line of a more just standard talk therapy approach, or maybe a journaling practice is kind of more reflective. So there's a good mix of different types of tasks, some that focus more on behavioral aspects, some of which focus more on being more reflective. In the middle to the latter half of the book, a task that keeps on repeating is talking about where are you still procrastinating or feeling stuck. Write down what you gain from not doing what you want to do. I still have to do a lot of work on that personally, but it is that idea of there is a reason why you're not pursuing your creative dreams or your creative goals. Another big first impression, and it wasn't like an absolute first impression from first starting the book. I'm gonna have this as its own separate section because I feel like this is the thing that no one talks about. This book relies heavily on spirituality and faith. Even though it says you can put any belief system you currently have onto how the book frames it, there were bits that bugged me, especially in the first time of me going through it. However, like I said, I want that to be my own separate section because redoing the book was interesting. It was wild. So yeah, put a pin in it. But yes, I think that is a first impression that I had. However much of that was in the writing and me projecting because of where I was spiritually at the time, it sullied my experience of the book the first time round. Might as well say this now. If you're super, super, super atheist, you might not enjoy this book. If you're like, who's that guy, that massively atheist guy who like hates religion and religious people and he writes books and stuff, editing me, put his name. If you're like that guy, like you will not like this book. So like I would say probably don't even go there. Let's get into the meat and potatoes now. Let's talk about morning pages and artist dates. These are like the 2 big tenets of the Artist Way's whole methodology. Morning pages are when you get up in the morning and you write 3 pages of stream of consciousness prose. You're not trying to write anything specific. It doesn't have to make sense. Ideally, you don't stop and think about, what should I write about today? In that situation, you just write, I don't know what to write, or my mind has gone blank. The sky's nice today. I'm kind of bored. I don't really know what to write today. You know, it's literal stream of consciousness, and you do it for 3 straight pages and then you're done. People have mixed feelings about morning pages. I actually like them. There are times when I don't. I have made a slight tweak to morning pages that make them less of a stress for me when I'm, you know, time pressured. But on the whole, I like them. I understand why it's 3 pages because the idea of it being 3 pages as opposed to 1 or 2 is that you get through the mundane stuff and then at about halfway through page 2 to the start of page 3, that's when you'll write something that has been lurking in your subconscious and it just needs to get through all that fodder to be like, what are you actually, you know, thinking about, worried about? It can even be things unrelated to your art. It could just be like, like the amount of times, I should really look back over my old morning pages as well, but like multiple times, like me wanting to quit my job has come up, which, you know, granted, you know, what is feasible and stuff, but like you might just be like, okay, I've mentioned this particular thing most days for the past like month of doing my morning pages. This is probably something I should look into changing. Essentially, it's a stream of consciousness journaling practice. There's lots of evidence, both experimental and anecdotal, for the benefits of journaling. Psychologists and psychiatrists talk about it, productivity influencers talk about it. Like, journaling is a really useful tool, and that's basically what the morning pages are. When I've spoken to other friends who have done the artist way, a lot of them change it. So I have a friend of mine, they are an artist. I knew them back in Southampton, and this person was like, I didn't really like the morning pages, I prefer to art journal. They're a visual artist by and large. I've had other friends who have been like, sometimes I'll do the 3 pages, sometimes I'll write a poem, or sometimes I'll do some other kind of writing task that like frees me up. Whilst I think those things are helpful, I think they're things that you can only really do if you're already unblocked, if that makes sense. Like, let's take, if you're a visual artist, art journaling as the first thing you're doing, for example. If you have an established art practice, and obviously you can still have those like self-doubts of like, am I actually good or whatever, but like you're unblocked enough that you're not gonna like not draw because you think you're bad, and so you're at a point of your unblockedness where you can play with your art form. I think if you're more blocked, or if you've got more things that you need to work through, I think that's where morning pages would be more helpful than like sitting down in the morning and being like, I don't really want to write 3 pages of what's in my brain, so I'm going to try and write a poem. I think you have to be at a space where you're relatively confident in your artistic skill to be able to do that. The main problems that I have with morning pages is, one, that they're in the morning, which in itself isn't bad, but when you are on a schedule trying to write 3 pages when you've literally just woken up, because that's the time you have to do it, because then you've got to like shower, have breakfast and leave to be at rehearsals on time. Not a lot of insightful stuff gets written, I'm gonna be honest. It's a lot of, I'm really tired, I feel groggy, I don't know what to write, today I've got rehearsal, I haven't learnt my lines yet, I'm really tired, I don't know what to write, I'm hungry, I need to go and have breakfast, I need to shower. Not a lot of epiphanies happen. The second problem for me is that, again, it has to be 3 pages. When I started doing this book the second time, there was a distinct time I'd woken up late. I was in the kitchen because I think Josh was doing something in the room or something. For some reason, I was writing my morning pages in the kitchen. It was like getting to like 11 o'clock in the morning, and there was stuff that I wanted to do in the day, and I was just feeling more and more anxious because I was writing really slowly because I was distracted and I'd woken up late, and all I could think it was, I need to get on with my day, and I haven't done my morning pages, and these pages are going so slowly, and I'm getting more and more stressed and more anxious. In the end that day, I just wrote 2 because I was like, this anxiety is not helping me, so I'm just gonna finish here and call it a day. After that, when I read the tasks in week 1, it said set a timer for 30 minutes every morning and write your morning pages. And so that's what I do. I set a timer for 30 minutes and I stop when I've done 3 pages or the timer goes off. No matter where I am in my morning pages, if the alarm goes off, I stop. That stops my anxiety because I know, I know that I'm only going to be writing for 30 minutes. So from a timing perspective, I'm not going to end up running late because for whatever reason, I'm writing slower than usual and I have somewhere to be, or I have stuff I need to do. I know that it's just going to be for half an hour, and that has helped so much. There are probably other ways to get the benefits of morning pages, and if you have ways that do that for you, then fair enough. I do think doing the morning pages for the whole course, if you've never done it before, is a good thing to do. I also, and this is something that I want to start experimenting with, think that there can be potentially big benefits in doing your morning pages and then going into a creative session with the thing that you're struggling to do. So that's something that I've experimented a little bit with and want to experiment with even more with writing when I have the time to, because then if you know you're going to do that, you can also use your morning pages to write out and counter any blocks you have from doing that creative session. Artist dates are the second main thing that you do in this course. I love artist dates. I'm really bad at planning them. I tend to plan them last minute. That's probably due to me not giving myself the time I deserve, but artist dates are great. I love the fact that they are not meant to be big A artist dates. They can be fun things. Like I literally bought it's really cheap and it's not like an actual watercolor pad because the paper is not watercolor paper, but like this watercolor pad of like floral designs. I actually have one I did here. Excuse my terrible watercolor painting, but like the flowers were already drawn in and then you just like paint it in. And am I good at painting? No. Do I want to be a painter? No. But this was really, really fun. It was really fun to do. It just changes your perspective. Like for me, I found that the point of artist dates was getting in touch with your inner artist child and just being playful and curious. So like going into random shops. The amount of antique shops I've gone to in these last 3 months, and like I've never really gone antique shop shopping or charity shop shopping, and it's not like in the view of like to buy stuff. Like I have bought stuff, don't get me wrong, but like not in the view to buy stuff, but just to look and to take in. I made salt dough for the first time the other week and made like lots of little figurines. I need to paint them. That's gotta be, I need to book that in as an artist date at some point. It just helps kind of slough away that feeling of like, especially as an actor, and I feel like actors, we have a slightly easier time because our job is all about play. So I think we have an easier time than most than connecting to like our inner artist child, but like being able to do that in a way where it's like, it's not work and it doesn't matter like what the end product is. Like it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I'm just, this makes me really happy. I need to put it up somewhere, maybe I'll frame it. But like it doesn't matter that the brush strokes are really, really streaky. It doesn't matter that there's probably somewhere bits where the colors have run into each other. Like it doesn't matter. It was just fun to do. Yeah, I love artist dates. I just need to get better at planning them in advance. Yeah, let's get on to the weekly tasks. So the weekly tasks, like I said, there's a good mix of like practical tasks of like go out and do some stuff, and then more reflective tasks of like think about this or imagine that. It makes it a more holistic experience because you're not just focusing on think about your childhood and then it's like, okay, I'm thinking about my childhood, but how does that help me? And it's not just like do practical things, but then it doesn't actually get into the meat of potatoes of like why you do or don't do what you do or don't do. I think when you're doing a lot of cerebral stuff, like a lot of talking or a lot of journaling, it can be hard to feel like anything is happening. And that's not to say that you always feel change or that change should be quick. In fact, I think in the book she says like change can happen quickly, but also like that's the point isn't rapid change. The point is it's a journey, right? It's the artist's way. It's not the artist's deus ex machina. But I think when you're doing active things, it can feel more like, even if you don't internally feel a change, you're like, I'm doing the thing. So like, yes, I've done it. Whereas a lot of mental work can feel like, well, I've thought a lot and I've felt some things and I've maybe cried or realized how much I hate insert adult figure here, but like, has anything changed? I don't know. In the book, she encourages you to do the task that you kind of have the strongest emotional reaction to. So that's either tasks that you're like, oh yes, this is going to be amazing, I really want to do this task, but also the tasks that you have the most resistance to. I would agree with that. I think resistance can show where something is out of your comfort zone, and you can only really grow and change and improve and learn through being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone. Therefore, tasks where you feel a lot of resistance, they're probably tasks that you need, which sucks, but also is, you know, work through it. From my experience, all of the tasks I've found useful in some way. There have been no task that I can either remember from the time before or found doing it this time around where I was like, wow, that felt completely pointless. There were some things that I found more helpful than other things, but all of the tasks, especially in the context with the essays for that week, makes sense. I should probably explain that actually. So each week there are a series of essays that are related to the theme of the week. The last thing I want to say about tasks is that I found them really difficult to schedule in, especially when during this 12 weeks that I've just done the course, that was when I was in rehearsal for Measure for Measure. 5 of those weeks I was doing Measure for Measure and had other things going on. We had some drama, Josh and I, with our house and our living situation. We thought we were going to have to move last minute. That also came with financial stresses. It's all sorted now, but yeah, I had no time to do anything other than my artist dates and morning pages for many of those weeks. So if you're really, really busy, it's tough. I think if your busyness is due to creative work, like mine was, I think you can cut yourself some slack because you are being creative. I think it was in this isn't in my copy, this is in like the 10-year anniversary copy, which is randomly at my work. There was Q&As which I took pictures of just for myself. I'll put them on the screen here. I might have to retake the photos though. In the question, how much time do I need to devote to it each day, it says it's a daily commitment of half an hour to an hour. I don't know if that's including morning pages though, because the morning pages kind of take half an hour. So it's probably half an hour to an hour on top of morning pages, which for me, I was in 4-day rehearsals and then commuting, and I had lines and stuff to learn, and I had to like rest from being in rehearsal all day, plus all of the other stuff I had on top. If you're already being creative, I think it's okay if that happens. If you're someone who is trying to put creativity into their life, I think you do have to try and make that time, simply because if you want to be creative, you'll have to make that time anyway. But yeah, it is a commitment, and it's one of the reasons why I was like, oh, whilst Josh is going through the course, I want to go back and look at some of the weeks again, because I do want to go back and do some of those exercises that I wasn't able to do. Right, now I've got all that out of the way, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the spiritual stuff, which I'm going to try and keep succinct, because Lord knows I've been already talking for an hour, so wish me luck. I'm going to start this off with one of the questions in the Q&A section of the 10th anniversary edition. To start off this section, so the question is, one of the central themes of The Artist's Way is the link between creativity and spirituality. How are they connected? Creativity is a spiritual force. The force that drives the green fuse through the flower, as Dylan Thomas defined his idea of the life force, is the same urge that drives us towards creation. There is a central will to create that is part of our human heritage and potential. Because creation is always an act of faith, and faith is a spiritual issue, so is creativity. As we strive for our highest selves, our spiritual selves, we cannot help but be more aware, more proactive, and more creative. The spiritual element really, really put me off when I first read this book. Without getting too much into I'm inviting all of the hate comments, am I? Disclaimer, I believe as long as whatever you believe improves your life and doesn't hurt anyone else's life or your own, I don't want you to be hurt either. Do what you want. If you're not killing in the name of anyone or shoving your religion down people's throats or telling people they're gonna burn in hell because they don't believe what you believe and it helps you be a better person, then do what you like. This whole section is just gonna be me, as much as I am comfortable sharing on the internet, talking about my experience with the spiritual side of this book, because I think there will be some people who would be in the same position as I was when I first read this book, who, you know, will get to those parts and be like, what the feck is going on? So yeah, disclaimers out the way. Almost as long as I've been able to think critically and seriously about religion, belief, spirituality, I have described myself as agnostic. As I've got older, agnostic/atheist. So when it's come to the belief in the supernatural or the divine having agency in the world, the reason I would call myself agnostic, and I've always kind of, although I've lent more atheist over the years, I think still agnostic is the closest thing, is that A, I don't believe you can prove that, let's call the divine entity God. I don't believe that you can prove that they exist. And for reasons that I'm not going to get into because I will talk too long, I think if God does exist, they don't actively intercede in our lives. I believe it's an entity that put the universe in motion, an entity that said, this time when we do the Big Bang, let's have slightly more matter than antimatter and let's see what happens. And then boom, stars, the solar system, Earth, trees, flowers, people. From having read this book twice, I strongly suspect, and this is no shade, but I strongly suspect that Julia Cameron is a theist. I also strongly suspect that she is a theist that believes in a version of the Christian Abrahamic God. I don't know that because I do not know her, and I'm not saying that her idea of God is like what the Catholic Church or the Reformed Church or the Baptist Church or whatever denomination is of God. She might have a very personal idea of what God is for her, but I do, just from reading it and from knowing about Christianity myself, because that's the closest religion that I've had access to, or the most access to, from my own knowledge of what the Christian God is, and from reading this book, I get Christian vibes. That is not to say that it's Bible bashy in any way. It's not. She doesn't talk about the Bible. She doesn't talk about God in those terms. And she does say any belief system that you have can be used in terms of the spiritual elements of the Course. And there are points where, when she's referring to God, I can't remember where in the book it is, but when she talks about God in terms of, I think, universal energies, and in brackets she mentions like source as one of the options as opposed to God. And if you don't know what source is, my understanding of source from people whose spiritual belief uses source is that source is kind of the all-encompassing universal energy that everything comes from, like spiritual energy that everything comes from. And there are some people who believe that when we die, we return to source. Rather than being reincarnated or going to heaven, you kind of return to that energy. So she is aware that other belief systems exist. In either the first or second chapter, she also has a whole essay on skepticism, which feels kind of aimed at the atheists, of being like, even if you don't believe it, just like walk the walk and see what happens. And she does say early on in the book that it can work both ways. You can either already have belief and then use that belief to work through the book, or you can just do the things that it asks of you when it comes to any exercises that deal with what she calls the creator God and that kind of spiritual work. Go through the motions of it, and then that can lead to spiritual belief, which again, I don't think she means you have to then believe in God in a organized religious sense. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. I cannot wait for the comment section. Oh, the hate comments. Right. So yeah, so God, the creator God, is a placeholder that you can put any of your own ideas into. The creator God tends to like really come in around week 4 and 5. There are tasks, or it might just be in the essays, where you can explore what God is to you. Like, is it a father figure in the sky? Is it like a Mother Earth goddess? Is it energy permeating everything kind of thing? And you're invited to explore that in your morning pages, which this time I did do. I can't remember if I did it last time. The issue that I have, especially when I was first doing the course, is that even though she says that the creator God can fit into whatever belief system you have, it still relies on belief in some kind of divine / spiritual / magical energy that affects your life to work, and it's not written as broadly as she says it can be used. So like, for example, with source, if you believe in source, source is not an entity, source is not a deity, source is not a god or goddess, it's just energy. And there are certain belief systems and traditions and rituals where you can use that energy, absolutely. You can use that, I mean, I say absolutely as in like, if you believe that that can happen. You can use that energy to manipulate things in the mundane realm. This is gonna sound really woo-woo. It's not my fault. I'm just trying to explain my issues with it. For example, at the end of the book, there is an artist's prayer, which there is a task where you are invited to write your own version. But that artist's prayer reads a lot like a Judeo-Christian prayer. I mean, I might as well just read the beginning of it because I have it on my phone. So the artist's prayer that she writes in the back of the book is, "O great creator, we are gathered together in your name, that we may be of greater service to you and to our fellows." And then it goes on from there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but that sounds like a, not necessarily Christian, but a Christian type prayer to me, where you pray to our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, blah, 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 blah. Like, you can't say that to source if source is what you believe in. And there are other religions that don't necessarily have deity figures that you pray to. Like Buddhism, for example. I know there's lots of different types of Buddhism, and I'm not an expert on Buddhism. And I know in some traditions the Buddha is divine, but in some traditions he's not, is my understanding, is that in some Buddhist traditions the Buddha is not divine. He was a dude who found enlightenment. I don't know if they have other deities, but if they don't, like, if you just believe you do good things and you eventually get reincarnated and there are no gods, or there is no God, who do you pray to? If you don't believe in God and you don't believe in ancestor worship and you don't believe in spirits and you don't believe in the Fae and you don't believe in like any kind of entity that you can call on and either petition or pray to or invoke or whatever, like, what do you do?
Incidentally, since filming this video, I've actually found a couple of articles on atheistic prayer and prayer practice, which I found really interesting. So I will link those in the description if you are interested in reading them.
Now, without getting into too much detail, because personal life, this time of doing it, I have been more open-minded. And I think that's just because I knew I was at the point where it was like, okay, I need to do this again, and I know this is going to come up, so I'm going to have to be open-minded. And I've also started exploring, okay, so what can I believe in? Even if it's just in the moment when I'm doing a thing, or like I'm trying to connect to that higher self, what can I believe in, even if my own personal belief is that it's more of a psychological tool than something actually being out there. And I hope no one feels like I'm being disrespectful saying that. That's just my personal belief. And it's how I've always felt with things like the law of attraction and stuff. I've always felt that the reason that law of attraction works is that it stops you getting out of your own way, because if you ask for something, you're more likely to see opportunities as responses to that petition. You're more likely to act on it because it's like, it's the universe answering my petition. And then when things go wrong, you can fall back to like, it's happened for a reason. Maybe something else will come out of it, and it's easier to stay positive rather than being like, I was an idiot for going for that thing. I think what I've always underestimated, and that I have more appreciation for now, is that there is something in the believing. There is something in believing that something is going to work. Maybe not on your desired time frame, maybe not in the way you want it, but just knowing that if I keep on doing the work, it's going to come to fruition. I do think that's where you've got to be very specific in how specific you're being. Like, if you're vague, your behavior's not going to change from that belief to be able to get that thing, because you don't know what you're going for. And if you're way too specific, then it makes the probability even less. Belief and faith, for me, as someone who is agnostic atheist, doesn't believe God exists, or if they do exist, they're not gonna come in and be like, hey, I've got your back, let's make this happen. I do believe that belief that God has got your back, or the universe has got your back, can cause you to change your behavior, because with that belief comes confidence and self-assurance, and you know, you're going to put yourself out there more because you're like, I've got nothing to lose and the universe has my back, so if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen, without you having to worry about, do I look silly? Which, like, you might still worry about, but if you know God, the universe, your ancestors have got your back, they're more important than you being silly, right? If you believe in those things. Do I think you need to believe in those things to be successful? No. There's lots of people who I mean, I don't know what everyone believes, so maybe they do believe in all this stuff, but like, I'm sure there are people out there who don't believe in anything supernatural or magical or divine, who are just like, just don't worry about looking stupid and don't worry about whether they're being audacious or whatever, and just like see opportunities in everything and just go out and do it. And a lot of those people may well be mediocre, but like, because they put themselves out there and don't get in their own way and have that self-belief without having a divine entity to believe in, like, they get the job done. Immigrants, we get the job done. And do I think that that's ideally how things should be? Yeah, I think ideally everyone would be well adjusted enough to just like go out and get their dreams, right? However, we don't live in an idealistic world. And I'm at the point where I'm like, if I can find something that I can believe in, even if it's just for that moment, and it's going to make my life better because it's going to help me change my behavior and achieve what I want to achieve, then like, screw it. I'm gonna give it a try. That's basically why I had a better time this time round than last time round, because last time round I wasn't in that place yet. Call it desperation, but I wasn't in that place to allow myself to, how I saw it, be tricked or trick myself by believing in something that I didn't think exists. Now, to a certain extent, I still believe that. I'm not going to suddenly start going to church because this book is like, you need to believe in a creator God, because I'd feel like a hypocrite and that would be really disrespectful to all the actual Christians out there who believe in God and Jesus and all of that stuff. I wouldn't do that. That would feel very disingenuous and inauthentic. But I'm at a point where like, I am starting to look into the history of religion more, which like, I'm interested in history, and history of religion is history, so it's interesting. But like, thinking about, okay, so what do I actually believe in? And actually start to interrogate those things again. And look into, okay, this is something that skeptically I could believe in, and it fits into what I believe is actually happening without being rude. Sorry, I'm really warm, so my mastery of the English language is going to go downhill really rapidly. I'm so sweaty. I can believe in this without feeling disingenuous, without being disrespectful to anyone who genuinely believes these things, without being culturally appropriative, and it doesn't feel, I think this was kind of important to me, like, it doesn't feel too loaded and doesn't feel too indoctrinating. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, it doesn't feel like you must do da 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 da. I can go at my own pace with it. I'm not feeling like, okay, so like, this is the release and I have to like jump all in, because it's like, I still don't know fully what I believe. I'm still exploring. And those things made the spiritual aspects of this book easier for me this time round. I also think that my attitude towards religion made me judge the book more harshly the first time round. And when I realized this, I was like, I need to mention this in the review. Right. I still have a distinct memory of reading in this book a sentence about like, if you still don't believe in God at this point, if you don't believe that a creator God will like help you, then you are a blocked artist. And I have a memory of like writing things in the margin being like, no, it could just be this. I think I have a memory of walking somewhere and calling Josh and being like, can you believe it? This book said this, blah, 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 blah. And it's bullshit. And so like, I was gearing up reading this the second time to be like, that's gonna come up again. It's gonna tell me I'm blocked because I don't believe in God and I'm gonna be angry about it. And it wasn't there. I was waiting for it and the sentence never came. The writing in the margin never came. So like, that was definitely a fabricated memory. The sentence, if you don't believe in God, you're a blocked artist, wasn't in the book. And I couldn't see anything I didn't read anything that I was like, okay, that's not how I remember it being phased, but I can see how I got that from that. Like, literally nothing. I even flipped back through this book twice to try and find where I got that memory from, and like, it's not in here. I don't know what happened there, and I'm out of notes, so I'm gonna put this down. All this to say, if you are a staunch atheist, if you have religious trauma, if you have a belief system but it doesn't involve deities helping you in any way or entities helping you in any way, and you can't get behind a more psychological model of belief, whether it's belief in a true thing or not, can change your behavior. If you can't get behind that, you're not in a position to like look into belief systems that maybe you hadn't considered before. Maybe this book isn't for you, not only because it is a huge part of the methodology of this course, but also you might end up getting in your own way. I think just the fact that what I had such a vivid memory of being in this book wasn't there makes me think of like how much I got in my own way the first time round and didn't get as much out of it as I could have done because I was just so, you know what I mean? And then I just want to close on my thoughts on the Q&A that I started this section with about how creativity and spirituality connected. I do agree with Julia Cameron that creativity is an act of faith. A lot of people don't believe that they're creative. We're taught at a very young age that if you're not automatically talented, then like you shouldn't do stuff. The amount of people who were told that they can't sing at the age of 5 and so they never sing, or they're told they can't dance so they never dance, and that can go into a whole other tangent of like creativity for like fun / emotional mental, spiritual joy versus as a profession. Like, that's a whole other tangent. I think when I was younger, when I first did this book, I didn't have a full appreciation of how much belief plays into that and how useful having an external thing to believe in can help you with that. Do I still personally think that's more of a psychological thing? Yes. I don't think like anything is actually, like, sitting here now, I don't think anything is actually helping me. When I say my own artist prayer, or when I meditate on my own artist prayer that I wrote for myself, in that moment I believe it, and I do think that it's helping. I think it's helping me in my relationship to my creativity and helping me overcome the blocks that I personally have. So even though sitting here now mundanely in front of a camera telling you about this book, I don't think anything's helping me, my belief when I do those little rituals that I'm starting to create for myself are helpful. If you are not in a place where you can explore that, and if you are like aggressively like, no, you probably will not like this book. And I don't know if anyone's talking about that. However, I do think you can still get something out of this book if you are atheist, agnostic. I just think it will be a lot harder for you, and I think it would either mean you just cutting out those things completely and completely ignoring them, which in places are hard to do because a lot of it is interweaved, especially after kind of week 4, there's a lot of interweaving of like the idea of the creator God. So for example, week 5, I think, is about abundance. And so there's a lot of stuff about money and a lot of discussion of how a lot of people don't think God interferes with money, which is like, fine, people have their own beliefs and it is about breaking that down. But if you're someone who's like, well, God doesn't interfere with money because God doesn't exist, it's going to be hard to pass that out of what the message of the essays is telling you, because the essays are literally about God will help you with money. Just ask the creator God. He wants you to like have money and feel abundant. It's fine. You'll just have a whole essay that you won't be able to get much out of, which like, you do you, boo. But yeah, I think that's just the difficulty. I spent like half an hour talking about that. Jesus Christ. Right, I think it's time to finish this book. This book? Oh my God. It's time to finish this review. Let's wrap it up, buttercup. This is the point where I'm out of notes, so I'm just gonna kind of be riffing. Okay, let's start with what I think this book is useful for. I think this book is useful if you want to live a more creative life. I think a lot of the exercises are really, really good for that because it explores creativity generally, which is also why I think whatever creative pursuit you want to follow, this book is also useful for. And I think that this book has definitely helped me approach life in a more creative way through the artist states, through thinking about what would actually be fun to do, not having to be like, I'm going to do this big capital A artistic thing, you know, finding the playfulness in that and finding the playfulness in life as well, which I think can be really hard even when you work in a creative field, because then you have the pressures of that. I think it's very helpful in getting your goals clear. If you're an actor who maybe there are several disciplines that you've thought about getting into, but something's been holding you back. So like, let's say you trained in straight acting, but you've always kind of liked to sing, but you've never thought you were any good, and you've always thought about getting singing lessons, but like you've always kind of held you back because money or time or whatever it is. Really interrogating what it is that's making you procrastinate. Is it because like you're actually not fussed, and actually the reason you don't have the money all the time is because you'd rather spend that money on time on other creative things that are fulfilling you, so like it's fine? Or is it something else? I think it's also great for jealousy and using jealousy to show you where your blocks are and where you want to pursue. So like when you're jealous of someone, breaking that down and being like, why are you jealous? Really useful for relationship to money. I know I mentioned the abundance thing in the spiritual section, but like in general, the idea of money and abundance and just like scarcity of resources, especially money and time. It can feel like an actor, like money and time are the resources that you do not have, and kind of reframing that. And I think whether you take the spiritual side of those discussions or not, I think interrogating our relationship to money and time really, really useful for actors, especially because we have so many expenses. Actors have so many expenses that we have whether or not we're acting. So interrogating our relationship to those two things and making sure that those relationships are healthy, and also fostering feelings of abundance that don't need money or expensive things. Finding the things that make you feel abundant even when you're broke, so you don't feel like you have scarcity. This book is not a step-by-step guide of like how to do the thing, whatever the thing is. At no point are there exercises that are like, go and work on your project that you want to work on. You're not gonna have something that you can be like, great, 5 gold stars, you did that thing. You won't have anything tangible at the end of it, apart from your morning pages. Your morning pages you will have. Everything else, yeah, it's not a working through a project type thing. So if you're looking for something where it's like, you don't have to work through any childhood angst, you don't have to work through the fact that teachers said you were rubbish at things, or your parents were like, oh no, don't be an artist, how will you eat? You don't have to do all of that stuff. You just need a step-by-step, I want to do this project, so like step 1 is do these things, step 2 do these things, step 3 do these things, etc, etc, etc. At the end you will have a thing. You need a different book for that. You probably need a more specific book for that as well, like for like your actual discipline. This book may not be good for staunch atheists. I've already mentioned it. I'm not going to go into that again. I also think this book probably isn't good if you are not good at introspection. And that's not to say that you have to have like gone through therapy before and like done journaling for ages and like be able to meditate and like sort through your thoughts. I don't think you have to be an expert in any of those things, but like you have to be able to like self-reflect, because the whole point of this course is you getting through your blocks to creatively recover. Only you know those blocks, and the only way you can know those blocks is if you do the work. If you write in your morning pages, work through the more self-reflective prompts. If you're not ready to think about those things and work through those things, this book isn't for you. Now, it might be that you're not ready because I don't know you. There might be a lot of traumatic stuff in there, in which case like therapy is always great. We are advocates for therapy, and if I was a bigger channel, this would be where I'd put a sponsorship for BetterHelp. If you feel like you need the support of a therapist, look at your options. In the UK, we have the NHS, so you can access therapy for free. There is a really long waiting list unless you are in crisis, which is a bummer. If you are a performer in the UK, BAPAM, which is the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine. Yeah. Last time I checked, which was pre-COVID, so double check again, but they do offer counselling and therapy for some things, and they're not free, but they keep their costs as low as possible by not like being in Harley Street in central London, for example. It's charities as well. Depending on your situation, you might fall under the bracket of a charity that offers counselling to people in your certain situation, and then there's charities like Mind UK. I don't know if they offer counselling, but they definitely offer information, which can be a starting point. Yeah, if you're in other countries, I don't know what's out there for you. I do know, because a lot of YouTubers that I watch are American, that therapy can kind of be difficult to come by in the US because it depends on like healthcare providers and things in terms of insurance. But yeah, if you need that support, at least look into your options so that you know for definite if you can't get any help, because you might be able to get help. What I will say is that this book doesn't go like super deep. So for example, I know that shadow work, like Carl Jungian psychology shadow work, is like really big at the moment on the interwebs, and some of those prompts can go really deep. So it's like, if you have trauma that's unprocessed, you don't want to go there by yourself. I don't think this book goes that deep. So I don't think, if you do have trauma, I don't think you should be too worried. But again, if you think you need support, see what options there are for therapy, and you can at least tell them that you're working through this and be like, can you support me if stuff comes up, you know? In general, would I recommend this book? Yes, I would recommend this book. If you want to live a more creative life, if you want to find ways to improve your creative, I don't want to say output because that sounds really like productive, like hamster wheel, but like, you know, if you're wanting to make positive change in your creative life, whether that's your creative career or just your life in general, I would recommend this book. I think if you want something more than just making your life more creative in general, this is not going to fix everything. There are still other tools that you may need specific to whatever you're trying to do. So for example, if you're coming to this book wanting to be a writer and you don't know how to structure a play, for example, you're going to need to learn how to do that, and just having the confidence of like, the creator god's got my back and I've worked through what my English lit teacher told me when they said that I couldn't write for shit. That's not going to help you through absolutely everything, because at some point someone's going to read your work and they're going to tell you that it's bad because you don't have the proper writing skills, and that could just lock you straight back down again. That is covered in the book about not sharing stuff too soon, by the way, but yeah, you're still going to need to learn how to write. You'll still need to either get like a book on writing or do a course on writing of some sort. Like, you're still going to need other stuff, but I think this book can be a really good supplement to any kind of technical self-help training that you're doing in terms of specific disciplines. Like if you're doing a fine art course, this could be a good supplement for that. Yeah, but I think this book is helpful. I think as long as you're open-minded to all of the aspects, you allow yourself where appropriate to put your skepticism, if you have any, to one side, this book is really helpful, and it can cause a lot of positive change if you can put in the work and give it a chance to. So yeah, so that was my review of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Let me know if you have read this book before, and let me know what you thought of it, because I'd be really interested if you had the same issues with it that I did, or if you had different issues with it, what you thought of morning pages. I know that they can be contentious, but yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Come on down, we have a great time. This video was a bit different. Usually we talk about theatre, so yeah, if you're down for that, we talk about theatre, musicals, plays. We kind of have a good time, we jam, we hang out. Stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye friends!